how would one fail at therapy for creatives? Being like as someone walking into your office, not necessarily as you're an artist, you're kind of a magician of psychotherapy, but as someone that walks into your office and is gonna be influenced, gonna take on board some of these ideas, how would they fail? What's the pitfalls along the way?
Phil Phails for you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think they can fail. We would fail because psychotherapy is a dyad. It's the therapist and the patient, and trying to get to a place where they turn down shame to the minimum and are able to experience sort of a much wider range of emotions, and with a lot more emotional resilience, and sort of get over the really good ones or the really bad ones quickly, metabolize what's going on instead of being, either overly attached to your emotions or afraid of them. So the failure would be if we did not have enough, if we didn't have the kind of insights that changes thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, because that's the deliverable. Therapy, we want to have all the thoughts. We want to have all the feelings. Those are not your report card. Your behavior's your report card. So I use some techniques to work with creatives to give them the kinds of insights that start to be metabolized and can start to give somebody like a new way to respond to things that they have been merely reacting to in a negative fashion.
Sounds to me like if there's no aha moments that lead to behavioral change, that'd be a failure.
Yeah, I guess so. We can call it that because, some of it is very gradual. Depth psychology, there's actually a term for it. It usually takes place over a very long period of time and builds a therapeutic relationship with the therapist and the patient. And that relationship becomes a safer and safer container to experience deeper and deeper phenomenon, emotions, thoughts, things that we would edit is like unacceptable. And, we really are sort of this weird sort of balance of things that we'll address in our consciousness and the things that are really, we kind of rather not have anybody know about.
Yeah.
And most people don't experience the world that way. They just kind of have a threshold, which the bad or the less desirable things kind of they do enough video games, or they eat enough food, or they have enough sex, or they take on new things to do, so they can stay one step ahead of things that normally would reveal themselves to them if they weren't distracted. So we try to get to that place where we can let those things show up and then find out what they want to teach us and what to do with them.
Yeah.
So if you were to fail, it's hard to fail, but it does happen. And usually it's because it's not a good match. Like I'm not the person that's going to be able to help them get to that place.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a very client-centered approach, like as far as like a human-centered approach where you take a radical acceptance. Folks are going to share all of their thoughts and feelings without fear, but also without extreme shame. And is that true? Is that I'm thinking like a Carl Rogers type of atmosphere?
Yeah, that's where it starts. Because once we can kind of like take the filters out and actually look and see what's there, then comes the more amazing part was like, well, what do I want to be when I grow up? Or what do I want to be as I grow up? What have I denied myself because I thought it was either impossible, not right, not acceptable, no one would love me if I did this thing, be this thing. So yes, it's very client-centered. As a matter of fact, Carl Rogers really was, when I first went to grad school, was not held in very high esteem. It was the rise of behaviorism, and everything, had to be like, there had to be a metric where we could easily quantify it. Now Carl Rogers is kind of cool again. And so I lived through an entire era of psychology, or I should say I went into the music business for that era, and then I came back and rejoined Carl Rogers on his ascendancy, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Am I giving you too much detail here?
No.
Okay.
This is perfect.
Right.
And yet at the end of it, there's this two-sided part where Carl Rogers, or client-centered, human-centered approach, is part of the safe container creation with you and your client. This is a safe place for you to be. And then on the other side of it, the fruit of that tree, if it's a good tree, if you nurture that plant well, is this behavioral change where they're like making new discernment, new decisions in their life, realizing things that they thought they couldn't.
Yeah. Not at the mercy of automatic reactions.
Right. It's not classic conditioning. It's more subconscious unwinding.
Yeah. It's being able to take a look at things that were either too fearful or too shameful to look at before.
Mm-hmm. Which is what's stopping you from expressing in your authentic way.
I'm going to use a term that we'll come back to later when I talk a little bit about the background of this, but it is being like your highest self, like being your best self, being, a complete version of yourself. Inside we contain multitudes.
Right.
There's the part of me that used to hate spaghetti that loves spaghetti now. There's two guys will be there fighting forever. But like spaghetti, like is really winning right now. It just allows you to make some choices. And with automatic reactive emotions and reactive behaviors, you're cutting yourself out of the amazing ride of knowing who you are, and then consciously trying to be what you want to be. Maybe you're there.
Yeah.
It's really sad when I work with somebody who's really amazing and they can't allow themselves to be okay. And so there's a huge amount of like performative, like have to be this certain thing, have to do these things to be okay. People won't accept me. I won't accept me. I have to make this much money. It's those metrics start to degrade sort of the human experience.
Yeah. For some reason, something came to mind is like realize their agency.
Yeah. Agency is a great word and one that's almost kind of overused now in psychology, but it is being, able to like make a choice where there wasn't choice before.
Just agency, I guess I think of it, it's within the context I was talking to you earlier about the philosophy stuff that I'm digging into.
Yeah.
It's this idea that once you come to the conclusion that it's emptiness, that it's turtles all the way down, and that there is no ground to reality, then whatever we create this is all our canvas. Life as an art form. You can do I can make this whatever I want. And there is a lot of power. There is a lot of like, I create, I guess I was raised with platitudes on paintings, like hang in there with the cat on the limb or achievement stuff.
Memes.
Yeah. But now I'm getting to a place where I'm in my life where I'm like, oh, those make sense. I can determine my purpose and my mission. I do make sense of this world. I give it purpose. I give it meaning.
Yes.
And that's kind of what you're talking about. You allow people to, well, is that what you're talking about?
Well, I think that agency in the way that I'm looking at it, it allows people to make a choice as to what they want to do and what they want to be. Mm-hmm. So many people come to me and the very first thing we talk about is all the things that are limiting them, whether it's, a person or their behavior or their thoughts. Really extreme versions of this would be people that experience psychosis. It's like, hey, I have this voice and it never goes away. Yeah. And like high functioning people with psychosis, they are out there. They experience a thing that we do not. So to make sense and meaning of what's happening to them as a human being, those people actually teach me a lot. Teach me quite a bit. The more nuanced problems of day-to-day life, I'm really depressed because my boss hates me and I'm not going anywhere in this job. I'm afraid to do anything else. It's like we can start there, but we sure are not going to linger.
Yeah. We've all got thoughts in our head.
Yeah.
I start to think the only difference between me and some of those folks in psychosis is probably the volume of the thoughts. Like I have self-defeating, self-limiting thoughts that I have chosen to turn down the volume on and turn up the volume of other ones. But when I was younger, they were really loud and probably stopped me from doing so many things. and I'm not sure what makes them different. Maybe they're just louder, or maybe I perceive them outside of my head. But there is on days days currently where I'm like, you're not worth anything. You're ugly. You don't know how. You're not intelligent. You don't know how to speak. Just a cage of thoughts.
Mhm. It's exactly what you're describing, except for the person that experienced psychosis, sort of in the psychological sense of the word.
Yeah.
There is a voice or something they can see that is not of them, that is communicating with them, that has hijacked their sensorium. So they hear, they see, they feel, they have thoughts that are put in their head by this external thing.
Oof.
So if you can imagine, you're kind of at war with yourself because you're intelligent. You've got all these different, you do contain multitudes, and some of them are arguing about what we should do.
Yeah.
And they can get loud enough to where it's cacophony, and then you kind of white out emotionally. You go act out in some way to try to get rid of that or to make it go away.